general blog entry, kind of talking about a few things that will be coming up in future blogs, as well as what happened today. Kind of like to let people know that, so that is more of a general blog as opposed to anything specific. Today did not go quite as well as I had hoped with the lawnmowers. We found a few things out while we were building them. I talked about them in some other videos. What I'm hoping to do is use these as kind of tractors. So one of these, I had found oil on the side, and then when I removed the starter to see if the starter was good, we found this. My best guess was this was an explosion from the inside of the engine as a result of poor oil pressure. The rest of this vehicle had obviously not been maintained when we were looking at stuff. So my guess is someone kept crummy oil for ages and ages, and then eventually things just popped because the pressure was too great. So anyway, so one of these are a write-off. The one over there, which is good because that was the one with a smaller horsepower engine, and I was planning on using this Craftsman LT1000 instead, but I'll tell you about that in a second. The good news is we managed to salvage some tires, which is always good because these tires are super expensive. So I think I just saved myself 250 bucks in tires for replacements. So that's really good news. They're good tread and still good to go. I think that the starter I pulled off of this old engine will fit the other one by the looks of it, so that's a good coincidence. And then what's happened is also, so I've managed to salvage the tires. I'm also just getting to tear this apart with my mechanics class that I'm teaching this week to students, and learning about how this pulley system works, and just getting to learn about these motors. I'm pulling off this rear differential slash transmission using this, and hypothetically that motor over there, I might be able to make just a little putt-putt go-kart for my kids or for the students. Might be able to create some kind of tilling machine maybe. I'm not too sure. The little engineer geek in me thinks that I could possibly build something for the beds that is a quasi-pseudo tiller or something like that, but we'll see what happens when we pull it off. It is run off a pulley system, as you can see in the top, so we'll see what happens with that. And other than that, the rest will just go to the scrap yard. This one, what happened was we were pulling it all apart. I went to put gas in it. It went crazy leaky. And if there's anything that goes wrong on these things, it's the carburetor. So I got to buy a rebuild kit. It looks like it's leaking. The gaskets are no good. And so I'll have to seal that out. But what I found, and I don't know if it's going to show up in this video, is inside of here is where the carburetor goes into. I found all sorts of heinous junk in here. And so now instead this is turning into a full-out rebuild, which isn't such a bad thing. It's a nice pet project for me, but also when it's all said and done, I know that I'm gonna have basically a brand new ride-on tractor that will do the job and that has been serviced properly. So, and then worst case scenario is that I can use that engine for something else on one of my projects. So that's kind of what happened there today. So that'll be good news. And then what's happened is in an upcoming vlog, what I'm going to talk about is I've just ran out of drip tape. So now that I'm at the end of my drip tape, which I think was a 2,000-foot roll, what I'm going to do is I'm going to sit down and I'm going to price out the way that I built my irrigation system, and then find out how substantially cheaper that is to a proper irrigation system. We'll see how that goes. I may have found out that I totally wasted my time and have a semi-leaky system for no reason. I may find out that I actually saved a ton of money. Who knows? But that's kind of the whole idea of the frugal farmer, is that I want to find out ways to save money and make farming affordable to anyone and everyone. As we constantly see. We finally got some good sun. Tomatoes are starting to ripen. That's really good news because we were behind on tomatoes. The cucumbers are going gangbusters. So those are going well. And just starting to plant my seeds for the fall season. And once that happens, then I won't be doing much other seeding. I'm going to do a second planting of peas. One thing that we've learned is that when we plant peas, I got them in the front yard, we might check those out, is that I don't just do one planting of peas, I actually do successive planting of peas. So once I see the successful planting closest to the trellis, then what I do is I plant on the outside of the trellis another row of peas. So what happens is I get a couple of successions and those rows grow up each other. So we'll see how that plays out. I think peas are a great one. It's just, instead of just doing a one plant and then be done with it, that doing that successive planting is really conducive. I've also found out through my irrigation, and I'll probably find out a little more later on as I see what happens, but it appears at first blush that I am able on my well, this is exciting news for me, that I can irrigate both my center plot, my main plot, this one, as you've seen. I can irrigate this one as well as my plot up front at the same time. It appears that my well and pump have enough pressure to do that. Part of that, again, I've talked about it in another video. Instead of cluttering up your area here with all sorts of pressure regulators, I only have one, and that's because it's a hose bib type that I have it there. But this light green one right here, what's happened is I've installed the pressure regulator, and what I do, as I've talked about in other videos, is I've installed it all the way up here because it goes uphill, and I didn't want to have the pressure being poor all the way up the hill, and it has definitely helped. Two things that have helped me get away with irrigating this plot, that plot, and the greenhouse on such a far distance is definitely putting the regulator right at the head of where you start. And then also what has happened is I have looped these ends leading up to the greenhouse, meaning that instead of going in other plots that you'll see at other headers where I connect that bed to this bed, on the end of the beds, what I've decided to do is I've decided just to loop this. That way I'm not having to run more pipe than I need be, and I'm also ensuring that in case there's a plug on this line for some reason, maybe it's crimped or something, that does happen while we're moving lines around, that the water can still get in the other end, and so you make sure things are okay. Now this is one of the problems that has happened with our with this method that I'm using. I've tried hose clamps on the tape and it doesn't work. This is definitely coming from the tape, not from the white stripe PVC 1/2 inch line I have. This is snug. I don't even need to put a hose clamp on that. It is super, super snug. The leak is happening here, and from what I can detect and read online is that my PVC fitting is 12 millimeters and this tape is 12.3 or something of that. There's like just a point something of millimeter difference. So what happens is there's just, I'm not even too sure if I can get it on video, there's like this just very subtle bubble that doesn't quite lock up. And I've tried a hose clamp, so please, I've tried it. I've tried different size zip ties, I've tried multiple zip ties, and I still can't get quite this tied up. This is quite a bit of water to lose, and you know, I kind of do drip irrigation for the sake of efficient farming, but I also do it because here we're getting more and more droughts to be common, and I hopefully want to be a responsible farmer, I guess you could say. So this amount of water loss on each end is a bit of a problem. I try and make lemons out of lemonade right now. This is a bad example here, but for example, the ones that are dripping into beds, like this one, what's happening is it's actually watering my marigolds. Or any other beneficial plant I have at the end, and they're loving it. Some of our marigolds are so bright and so big and just providing lots of color and lots of pest resistance. So I'm trying to make the best out of it, because you kind of notice the same thing happens on the ends of your drip tape here, is you can get quite a bit of leakage as well. So just make the best out of it. So that allows me to do a lot more with a lot less, I guess you could say. I haven't closed up this second plot that's halfway between that and the greenhouse, but I will be closing that up and doing the same thing. As far as that leaking issue, the next step is to try Pro Dope. Apparently it's kind of like PVC cement, except it's always soft. And so I should be able to still pull the drip tape off if I need to for whatever reason, instead of having it permanently glued and anchored to the tape. So that's going to be something I try probably at the end of the season, to be honest. I don't want to be doing any more maintenance. I've kind of resigned myself to doing these beds, the front, phase 1 of the expansion, and those lower beds are really super low priority right now. We have a bunch of things that we're trying to do on the farm, And I've also run out of my source for horse manure, so all of a sudden I'm in a bit of a bind where I'm going to have to amend that with something else that involves a truck and a trailer, and the only way I can get down there is by truck, and it's quite tight, so I might have a bit of a problem getting amendments down there. I'm in a bit of a jam, so lower priority, focusing on these ones, but I definitely want to have that one done for as soon as possible. It's low priority, but as soon as possible, because I know that gets full sun all year. And that means I could plant any variety of crops down there, even if it's lettuce, but I'm hoping to do longer crops like garlic, and make sure that I only have to go down there once in a while to check on things as opposed to checking every single day. But we're having a lot of success with lettuce sales right now, and so part of me wants to do lettuce down there, because I think if we put hoop houses on it, that what can happen is we can actually be really successful with salad mixes and lettuce mixes during the fall and spring seasons. Again, winter is very questionable right now about how much sun we can get. So that's kind of what's been happening on the farm. Hopefully I gave you a few tips and a few thoughts, and just wanted to let you know what our progress was. So if you have any thoughts or comments on all of that, leave them down below, and make sure to subscribe. Thank you.